to this computer. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Outdoor therapy. Share. Let me put on large.
Hooray. Okay.
Excellent.
George, you're a star.
Oh, hang on, gone one page too many. There you go. All right, let's go again.
Lovely. So I'm going to have to do that to you, am I, to change slides?
No, you just tell me to change slide and I'll change slide.
Okay. So next slide, George. Thank you. So, guys, I'm really sorry about that, but this is one of the problems with being nearly good enough and not quite good enough. I guess that's what George was talking about with our equine services delivery. So I am CEO and director of therapy at Gull Outdoor Therapy, but the second part of our title, next slide, please, George, is exactly this: delivering equine assisted services. What does it mean and involve? Cool. So next slide, please. We're just going to whiz through a list of these things. I doubt there will be time for any more, but I have got stuff on neurodiversity and emotional processing if we need it. I'm not somebody who likes to have slides read to me, so I'm hoping that you'll be able to see these. And we are going to talk about how it works at Gull and so on. Okay, so next slide, please, George. 2 minutes on the subject of Gull, simply because it helps you establish how we fit in and why I would feel I could talk to you about this. So we are a growing national provider now. We started in 2005 with half a Shetland pony. It's not quite right, but you know what I mean. And we've just moved on from there. We are an ABRS riding school, and there's part of me that loves being able to assist other people with equine assisted services when you guys very much gave us a home when we were starting out trying to be a riding school as well. Okay. So I have been with the ABRS now quite a while, and we do what we call well-being lessons. We only really teach to ABRS level 4. Okay, so we're not training the next Olympians, but we love using horses in everything we do. Next slide, please, George. George mentioned before that I'm a GP, and I have escaped from the NHS, and I'm very pleased about that. So I think Gull is kind of growing a bit more because I've put my energies into this. And we are an outdoor therapy centre. And you may wonder what that has to do with you. Well, you've got fields and ponies and bugs and molehills and hedges and trees that change their leaves. So an equine centre lends itself to doing all aspects of outdoor therapy. And there are 4 main areas. So you can do the gardening and horticulture, which is the pale green. You can do nature and ecology. You can do outdoor pursuits, which is, believe it or not, where the horse riding fits in. Working with horses is an outdoor pursuit, and that's how it fits into outdoor therapy. And then finally, you have adventure and wilderness. Next slide, please, George. That'd be great. Complicated little diagram, but if you look at the heading, statutory agencies, well, we know what they are. Equestrian sport, that's your guys' bread and butter there. There you can see a wee box with RDA on it, because that's where a lot of you come linking into this area of therapy. We are the small circle in the middle of the 4, where we've got driving for the disabled, riding for the disabled, equine assisted services, and so on. And that's kind of where we fit in the green outdoor therapy bit. Next slide, please, George. Okay, just a few pictures of stuff you will all know about: lighting fires, building shelters. It's good activity. Next slide, please. So, equine assisted services. Let's get started. What is it? So on this slide, which you will now have a recorded version of, you can see that it's got a nice definition or two. You can improve physical, mental, emotional, behavioural well-being of people by working with horses. So if I'm talking to a primarily horse-based audience, I can see working through horsemanship. Everything you do with horses can be used in a therapeutic context. And we heard somebody talk earlier about working on the ground with the equines. Well, we can do everything. We can do groundwork, we can do ridden work, we can do bareback, all of this stuff we can make therapeutic. So as we've said, point 2 can be ground-based, ridden. I say with or without tack. We usually use a back pad, a bare back pad, just because it stops the worst of the slipperiness if you're not used to it. But we are talking about being led at the walk during times like that. So horsemanship for EAS is more than a sporting goal. It's more than getting your next level riding qualification. We are using the horses or working with the horses in EAS, looking at their personalities, their responses, their behaviors, etc., to help people. Next slide, please, George.
Sorry, hang on.
There we go. So just a little bit of background. You can look at this yourself afterwards, but the EAS title only arrived last year, and it was courtesy of HETI, which we will come to, because there was Equine Assisted Learning, Equine Facilitated Learning, Equine Assisted Therapy. There are so many different things that it is called that correctly people discerned we needed an overarching name. Equine Assisted Services has got it everything to do with horses, helping people fits in here. Because before this, we called it just about anything and everybody got utterly confused. Horses in Education Therapy International is what International RDA is now called. It's FRDI, blah, blah, changed its name. And so HETI was the one who looked into this. They're strong in the States, strong in Europe. They cover Asia, they're down in Australia, etc. So they came up with this and everyone was asked and we all voted. So EAS is what it's called. The States is well ahead of us. Every state in the United States has more than one barn in which they will practice ground-based equine assisted services. Okay, they're well ahead of us. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides are rather fun because clearly, I'm not telling you anything you don't know there. So you're going to be maybe outside. And of course, if you're an indoor arena facility, you have that. But you'll be in and out before you get to the arena. You're going to have a welcome when you arrive on the yard. Somebody's going to say, hello, Betty, nice to see you again. And you're going to have interaction with your equine and you're going to increase your knowledge or skill. Next slide, please. A typical EAS session provides everything. Oh, we've gone to lovely, thank you. Back more one, that's it. Everything on the first slide. So you've got the welcome, you're outside, you're working with the horse, everything there, but you're going to add in this other dimension, which is what is the horse telling you, pony, about the person that you're working with. Okay, that is the real extra bit. Everything else you do normally, you're just going to carry on doing, but there's another part to this agenda. Next slide, please. And this is a book I've written, so that's cool. But so I can pinch the slide is what I mean. You can see that we've a lady on the call who's a counsellor. So she would normally work at the bottom of the crown and she'd have the person receiving the counselling and there'd be herself there. So counsellor, therapist today will make them interchangeable. Then she's going to use a tool. So maybe she'll be using cognitive behavior therapy, maybe she'll be using person-centered counselling, lots of things like this. But look at all the other things we've got going on, because we've got the outdoor effect, we've got the effect of the equine itself, and we've got an activity. So it makes it much more complicated and therefore much more effective. On we go. Lovely. So just going to whiz down these because they're not that exciting. EAS we've dealt with. Equine Facilitated Learning, Horses in Education and Therapy International, HEIR, new one on the block. This is the Human Equine Interaction Register. This, we are hoping, is going to prove to commissioners It's going to give them assurance that people on that register are good enough to be providing services for county, for whatever. Okay, should help people gain grants for doing specific aspects of work. Equine Facilitated Practitioner Network, what it says on the tin, good place to go to learn more about it. And the Professional Standards Authority is where some folk are going to be registered as a professional, so that, again, what's that about? Assurance, people being able to believe that you're professional. And then at the bottom, you've got a gala, leap, the horse course, with a little bit about it, but conscious of the time. So we'll just move on. Next, please, George. So I now want to just spend a moment on facilitation versus coaching, because we've all, well, not all of us, but many of us have gone from being instructors to being coaches. And we understand there is a different approach. And I have to say, I'm very happy with the approach of coaching, and we'll see where we get to. But this is about facilitation. So just be careful with the word facilitation. If you are a coach of some sort, you might not want to stick with the word facilitation. If you're trained as a coach, you can be a coach anytime, any place, because a facilitator guides a group more than one-to-one. A facilitator remains neutral. Coaches don't. We deliberately help people move forwards. A facilitator helps the group work better together. Okay, now facilitator does make things easy, help people to learn. So you can choose, but that's what a facilitator does. And we'll have the next slide, please, George. And then we'll be able to see that a coach, so I would like us all to be equine assisted coaches, but practitioner will do, form of development where an experienced person supports someone to achieve a specific personal or professional goal by training and guidance. You can see that's what you do when you're teaching your riding, but it is also what you do when you're helping people move forward with life skills. Coaching is all about the present and not the past. And then some of these are things you may remember from your training, the types of coach that we can be: autocratic, holistic, democratic, laissez-faire, etc. Next slide, please. And the next slide is just a picture slide, which is great, because in it you can see some army in one of the rooms. You can see 2 Highland ponies in the middle. You can see people with blindfolds on meandering around in a field. And the one with the single Highland is a lovely one, because that was a frontline worker session. So 1 Highland pony. It's gone probably 50 meters. The rider is obviously hatted, etc., sitting on a back pad, and she is just having time out, being carried by a horse. And the therapy that comes out of that session is quite extraordinary. Next slide, please. So hopefully nobody's put off yet. And if we were going to have a look at whether you could do it, you have to remember, actually, you're more than halfway yet. You're about 3/4 of the way there, because you've all got ponies, you've all got staff, you've got premises, you have little trips you can do maybe around your site or somewhere else, risk assessed. You've got arenas, you've got agility cones, you've got equipment, okay, trained coaches, and you will have some life experience. So you may already be doing RDA, so you're used to working with people with certainly physical disabilities, and I heard someone mention neurodiversity, the autistic spectrum, so you've got experience in that. You may be parents, that's troubling enough, and you will have seen how young people grow and what problems they get into. So you are not far from being able to start. Next slide, please. So what on earth could we be talking about? Oops. We are talking about really simple things. Now, what could I teach somebody? We'll just take one of them. We'll go through grooming, okay? I can teach them the names of the brushes. I can enable them to succeed by passing their grooming rosette. I can explain that when we go out in the world or when we go to school, mud sometimes sticks to us and we have to brush it off because it might hide a hurt underneath it. I can teach them that the horse likes it and they're helping the horse, therefore they're making a difference in something else's life. I can make them think about something awkward. We talk about putting it on the withers. They don't have to tell you what it is. Think of your worst memory for this week. Put it on the withers. Now brush it off. Clearly, that's an adult type of horsemanship activity, and you will see people get very, very excited about brushing this memory off, and you'll know when they've done it because their brushing becomes less vigorous. You need to manage the horse. Don't want the horse being upset. May need to give them a body brush if they're being too vigorous with something else. You can change the side of the equine so that it's not all brushing on one side. But this is really good. They think about it and they allow it to go to the ground, as it were, off the tail of the equine. And the trick is to let them leave without picking it up again. And I could talk the whole 40 minutes on how you make each of these things work. And one of the things we do in the course that we are now running, the Equine Assisted Services Diploma, is we ensure that you can speak horse. Now, if you are someone with a riding school, I would hope you can speak horse, because you're going to notice that little Freddie is not himself today, and that he's not moving as freely, and that he's just a little off colour, and you will pick these sorts of things up. Therefore, if Freddie takes one look at little human Jemima Jane, who walks into the yard and sticks his head up like this and his eyes go wide and he's showing signs of, oh, good grief, what's this? You know that there's something travelling with Jemima Jane in terms of her emotional burden that Freddie's not really enjoying and is reacting to. We can talk about that too for the whole 40 minutes, so better not. So on we go, George, thank you. So horses we can talk about in all of these different areas, and clearly I can't make everybody an expert in 40 minutes, but horses work on the emotional level. They are herd animals. One startle, they all startle. Don't you just love it when you're out on a hack and somebody in the group goes, whoa, and every other pony goes, whoa, and they clearly have no idea why they've done it, but they are responding to the trigger factor, which the first herd person said, run away, there's a bear. So they've all gone, yes, run away. And it turns out to be a plastic bag or a pigeon or whatever it may be. So they're really good at bringing emotions to the surface, and then you can deal with them. Sometimes people just arrive at the yard, burst into tears and say, I don't know why I'm crying. We have even got mean enough with adults to say, please don't wear makeup. Okay, if they want to cry, cry happily, because it'll pass. These things do. Physical health used to be entirely the remit of the RDA. It is now much wider than the RDA. And of course, I'm sorry, if you're a soldier and you've lost both legs, that's your physical health has been affected, but it may also have affected your mental health, because you now can't do certain things that you could do before. You may get bullied at school. You may be having a tough time because of your physical health, or it could just be post-COVID and you've got mental health problems. We have a lot of young people who are still stuck in being unable to return to mainstream education because they've missed out on some areas of growing up that just never happened. So learning, behavior, all of these things we can manage. Next slide, please, George. And in mental health, I'm going to leave you to read that, but everything, horses are awesome, and you might prefer to call it mental well-being, but they are really, really good, and there are so many lessons. You never run out of material, okay, when doing this. So next, please, George. These are examples of therapeutic interventions. So just being outside will make people feel better. Belonging, that warm welcome when they arrive at the yard will make people feel better. You teach them, oh, have you noticed that if you dropped your hand, supposing we were leading, just drop your hand. Don't need to be quite so close to the buckle there. Drop your hand and breathe out and relax. And now watch where the pony's head goes. So you were holding yourself very tense and anxious. The pony was mirroring your behavior. Now, by making yourself relax a little bit, you can see the pony telling you you've relaxed. That is the self-awareness. And you can trundle on down through those, and absolutely we can teach on each of them. George, please go forward 2 slides to how it's done at Gull. Next one again. Lovely, look at that. Perfect. So how do we do it? People say, I'd like to come for therapy. We say, lovely, please fill in some paperwork. Tell us a little about yourself. We then ask them to attend so that we can see that they are what they said on the tin. Now, we all know that we get folk turning up saying, oh, yes, I can canter and I can do this. And you put them on and they've no idea what a diagonal is or what the left rein is, and nor what the aid for canter is. So, you know, we like to check that people are what they say. And sometimes we turn people away and say, we can't meet your needs. That is exactly what George was referring to. If you can't meet their needs, don't pretend you can. So we teach folk how to assess people coming to the service, and best done face-to-face. When you know what they're coming for, you can arrange a program, could be 6 weeks. We often have people for a year. It's not unusual. You might decide, well, we could have a term-long program. They could go away for the holidays. They could come back for a term-long program. So you have to treat folk as individuals. It works better. And please don't think that EAS is easily done in groups. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because the people seeking equine assisted services to make them feel better normally are better managed one-to-one, at least to start with, which is why it costs a bit more. Okay, it's like a private lesson. Okay, so, and then we choose people, we don't have a time limit, and we measure outcomes. Next slide, please. So that's just some ponies lying down, ponies standing around the place, ponies being ridden. And each person's program will be different. Where possible, we will get a group of, let's say, neurodiverse young people. We may have 4 in a group, so we may have a session of 4 going on, but it is likely that you will need at least 1 member of staff to 2 people. Okay, that's how it mostly goes. Next slide, please. And at Riverside in Wiltshire, we have, as you can see, 23 ponies, 16 of whom will be in work at any one time. We've got some young stock that we're bringing on. We have a foal every couple of years, and we bring them on. We're actually getting 110 beneficiaries through each week, some of them for 5 to 6 hours at a time. Okay, because they come for the whole school day. We are busier than we've ever been, so there is plenty of work, and I would be the first to tell people if this wasn't something you should be coming into because actually the money's drying up and it's going away. It's not. This is probably the new future, and I wouldn't be surprised if you end up with more therapy sessions, or well-being sessions is the good buzzword, rather than even mainstream riding. It's that solid an offer. Next one, please, George. So just to show, that's Littlemore, that's Wales. Smaller enterprise, they have 6 ponies. They board that sound. We hug ponies in fields, and it's usually ground-based, but they have now got a ride coach, so they are able to do riding as well. Next one, please, George. And this is a good one. So you have your riding school, you have your coach approach, you know what you're doing. What do you have to do EAS? You have to measure outcomes. It's easy enough. You may be doing it already. A few tweaks will have you measuring, but you need to measure outcomes. You need to keep records, because you've moved into now you may keep records of how your lessons went and that Jemima didn't do well with riding Harry or whatever it may be, or that you were working on, you write your lesson plans, that if somebody else has to take your lesson next time, they know where you've got to. So it's not foreign, it is just that we worked on this. We looked at that. She found that helpful. We have made a little plan for next week when we're going to look at some other part of her life. Okay. You are going to make sure you speak equine and get used to saying, the pony is telling us. Okay. And you need to be safe and you need to be well governed about all of this so that you are above reproach, and you need to stop and work with small steps. 2 slides, please, George. Lovely. So why don't you just do it yourself? Well, you won't really be able to, because regulation is coming. And whilst people are already working with, let's say, a young person comes for a Downs riding lesson during the day, this is all great stuff. It's a sad fact everywhere. Health and safety's gone mad. Regulation's nearly as bad. They want to make sure that you're safe. So a little bit of training and a little bit of governance goes the long way. Why bother? I just said commissioners, that's the people who buy these services, are desperate to find providers. This could feel, as George was saying, your what I call dead time. We are never at a loose end during the school day because we are full of young people that can't make mainstream education. Okay, and that is what you would do it. And yes, why bother? Because it's actually rather fun. It adds a whole new scene to it. So next slide, please, George. So again, I'm not going to read you that list, but I want you to see there are loads of things that equines really help with, including daft things like bereavement. You probably knew they help with substance misuse, but there's a great deal of things. Next, second slide, please, George. Not that one. Typical income. Okay.
Oh.
How do you know if it works for you? Okay, so £25 for an hour for a non-ridden session is what we would charge for a non-complicated child, so that we were having 1 adult to 3. When you're starting, you may not be that capable, but that's what you are looking for. If it's 1-to-1 ground-based, then it's £50 an hour. And so it goes up. Okay, so it just gives you a handle. You don't have to follow this. You can do what you like. It depends which area of the country you're in. Wales can't charge as much as Wiltshire, but it just gives you an idea. Next slide, please. Sorry. We usually tell people to start with doing something like a well-being club, and it could be No, it's £25 per person for the hour. Okay, it's £25 per child. So, and schools pay this without even questioning when you're all trained up. So you would maybe start with your wellbeing stable clubs. You'd then consider programs and supervision that you could borrow from somebody else. That's what I would do if I were you. Don't recreate the wheel from scratch. There are plenty of things you can borrow from other people. See if you've got a nurse, a teacher, a physio, a counsellor who would like to join your team, who maybe rides with you on a regular basis. And you could say, we're thinking of doing this. Do you fancy giving us a hand on a Tuesday morning? They will love it because they love horses and they love helping people, and you'll probably get a win-win. Okay. I have then said, get under someone's wing for a while. It saves tripping up. Okay. Then when you're ready, you can launch solo. Next slide, please, George.
Hang on. Is it going forward?
No, that's got stuck. We need another one.
It has gone stuck. Let me just work out
maybe
why
you're
it's stuck.
buffering.
Oh,
Oh, look at you. You're so clever. I just have been stuck. So that's really good. So training. There is a lot out there now because there's a lot of people questioning and wondering, and I am not here to say join my training because it's marvelous, but what I'm here to do is this: do be careful. I have met people, as George says, being a GP, I like to be able to meet a lot of different needs. So I've been really careful not to get stuck in one zone. I know a type of training, which means you can only work with adults, you can only work in a round pen, and you can only work with a pony at liberty. Now that's grand. But when this person visited our facility and she saw that we tied somebody up, that would be tremendous, Hannah. We may have to look at that after, but yes, absolutely superb. You know, get on with it. Why haven't you started? So you need something that ties your human qualification to your equine one. You need something that bridges the two. That's what's coming out and that's what's required. If you work with Igala, they have a human qualified person and a horse qualified person, but they've nothing which joins it together. Some people love it. Some people don't approve of its system. I am being really neutral. This is a facilitator mode. Okay, I am not coaching you one way or the other. Be wary of training that says you can only do it this way. And of course, if you want to go further, you must come back and do our next course. Just be wary. I'm not saying don't do it. Be mindful. That is them making money to keep themselves afloat. Very good business proposition. No problem with it. Don't get caught if you don't want to be. If you are good with horses and people, stay with horses and people. If you are good at teaching riding, don't throw it all away and decide you must only do groundwork. Your comfort zone is an excellent place to start being therapeutic. You're probably doing it already. And do use training that adds to where you currently are, not that says, oh my goodness, rub it all out. What are you doing? Start again. So just some avoidance tactics, and I'm going to give myself 2 minutes for good behavior. Any training you take will be extremely good, okay? Because, so next slide, please, George. Any training you take will be with purpose because it will help you do all of these things, okay? And I think we should miss the next 2 slides, please, and come to measuring. Oh, that was good. That's our team. People get very excited about the fact you've got to collect data. If you are setting up a well-being something, start measuring from the beginning because it makes life much easier. These are some questions that you could do to measure. You can count hours, you can count how they felt, you can count what the school person says their behaviour is better, or mummy says she's been much better since she's been coming here. Use this. If naught was her behaviour when she came, what is her behaviour today on a scale of 10? Yes, Winnie, absolutely. Reach out after the session. If it wasn't for George on the slides, I wouldn't even be able to do that. Cool. So let's have a recovery star next, please, George. There we go. I don't know what happened to its little final corner, but anyway, this is a brilliant thing for measuring. I can teach you how to do that in 10 minutes, and then it's a really good tool. In fact, to be fair, you can probably Google it. There's nothing hidden about this. It's a recovery star. It's an analog scale. You count your way from 0 to 10. Quite simple. Okay, next slide, George, please. We better make that the last one. So, your ponies will like it because they get groomed, they stand around a lot, they wander here and they wander there. It's no hard work. Ponies rarely have to think too much, and they are allowed to tell you how they feel, which is quite nice for a pony. Ideal for ponies whom you really love, who are just getting a wee bit older and can't do hard, fast lessons anymore. So it's got a great deal of advantages. We're too busy. I would like us to go to slide 46, if you can, George, please.
Okay.
Next one. That'll do. That's lovely. And we'll stop there. So it's very effective. Okay, it's very effective. We can, we're very happy to share our experience. If you take a huge amount of our time, we'll charge you for it. But on the whole, you're welcome to stuff for free because you're ABRS colleagues. We want to see it available to everybody everywhere because it's much more effective than, you know, I can say this, medicines and sitting in a surgery. And if you would like some help, final slide, please, George. We have a thing called Grow with Gull, and we're getting quite good at helping people get to where they'd like to be, having put these services in. And that's me done. Thank you so much, George. What a star you are.
So I will stop sharing and I will stop recording.